You're listening to the Decidedly podcast. Our guest today is Sarah Knight, known as the anti-guru for her profane approach to giving practical advice. If explicit language isn't for you, please feel free to skip this episode and instead just tune into tomorrow's highlight clip where we bleeped out all of the explicit content. If you're not offended by explicit language, hold on to your hat. There's plenty of it coming at you. That's all for now. Let's get into the episode. I'm Morgan, your producer, and this is Decidedly.
All right, I have a question for you. What is something that you used to care about that you no longer care about?
Oh, man, something I used to care.
Yeah. Something you just said, I don't really care about that anymore.
I used to be embarrassed. I didn't know how to work on cars.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I was really a lot of my friends were really into building cars and fixing up their cars. And I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And I was embarrassed I didn't know anything about it. And now it's kind of funny for me.
Now you don't care that you don't know?
I don't care that
or you
don't know.
care that people know you don't know?
Either one. I don't care. I don't need to know how to do it. I mean, there's a few, you got to know how to change a tire and
sure.
There's some
basics.
I know enough that I get stuck on the side of the road, but I'm not driving anything to where I'm going to get stuck on the side of the road, and the only option is for me to know how to change an alternator.
Why do you not care about that anymore? Why do you not care that people?
Well, because
people know you don't know about cars. Why do you not care that anymore?
I don't care because I realize that I don't like it, and I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
And so it would be silly of me to spend a bunch of time and energy and money trying to learn this thing that I don't even enjoy and isn't really a necessary survival skill. And it's funny when people who have made that such a
big part of their personality,
and or masculine identity.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting there going, yeah, I'm totally secure in the fact that I don't know and don't care. Why? Because there's a car shop at the end of my street, 3 houses down.
Right.
I can push it to the shop if I need to.
Just push it
I
down the
really
road.
am never going to be in a lurch because I don't know how to work on cars.
Yeah.
I always have the money to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm never going to, oh man, the mechanic said it's $500. What am I going to do?
Right.
And I don't know how to fix it. No, man, here's my $500. Fix the car. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go do my things that I like.
Mine was I gradually stopped caring what other people thought. And I used to care a lot. It used to be super important to me. And I would, so much so that I would be inauthentic. I would do things I didn't want to do. I would try and please people that I probably shouldn't have been trying to please. And now I don't
care what they thought about what.
Well, in such a way that I don't modify my behavior other than, just being normally polite. I don't modify my behavior to gain approval from other people. And I got to that point eventually.
What were the things that you were doing to modify your behavior?
I would say yes to things that I wouldn't normally say yes to, go to events that I really didn't want to go to, join clubs I would, say yes, join clubs I didn't really want to join, in school or growing up. Play sports I really didn't really want to play just so I could be with my friends, for example.
Yeah.
And I just now I don't do those things. And I'm happier with myself. I'm just I'm not going to modify my behavior based on the opinions of those other people. To try and please people I maybe don't really care about that as much as
that
family,
is a
let's say.
Better way to live. And
well, I found that it is. I mean, it took me a while to get there.
Well, today's guest knows a lot about how to do that. Sarah Knight, known as the anti-guru for her profane approach to giving practical life advice. She graduated from Harvard, worked for 15 years as a top book editor in New York City. In 2015, she left corporate publishing to go freelance, moved to the Caribbean, and wrote The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck, which is currently in development for film. With more than 3 million copies of her writing in print, Sarah's No Fucks Given guides have been published in 31 languages and appeared on bestseller lists all over the world. Her acclaimed series of genius, hilarious, and no-nonsense self-help books includes runaway hits calm the fuck down and get your shit together. She also hosts the very popular No Fucks Given podcast. We talked with Sarah about holding consistent boundaries so people don't walk all over you, building habits for the want tos so they can come off your to-do list, shortening your to-do list into a must-do list, and how when you are a pleasure to deal with, it is much easier to bend people to your will. I had a great time. Sarah is wonderfully articulate, funny, and she has some practically great tips. Stick around. You'll learn something. And maybe you'll stop giving a fuck about things you shouldn't. I'm Sanger Smith. As always, I'm with my dad, Sean Smith, and this is Decidedly. Sarah, glad to have you.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi there.
So, what the fuck?
That's how you're starting.
Yeah.
That's an open-ended question.
That is.
You made our decision on whether or not we would have a censored podcast to be really easy.
Okay, well, that's good. We like easy decisions.
Yeah, we were talking about, should we bleep this or should we not bleep it?
Yeah, this is before even the decision to have you on, someone who's intimately familiar with the word fuck. We kind of used that vulgar language a lot, and my grandma being our number one fan, I think half our total downloads come from her buying up a bunch of devices and then downloading repeatedly.
Wow, tech-savvy grandma. I like it.
Yeah, she's pulling a lot of the weight around here. It's like, well, I know she's not a huge fan, but screw it, we're going to do it anyway. And then, we wouldn't be able to have the wonderful Sarah Knight on if we had made that decision.
For what it's worth, I have done speaking engagements, radio appearances, and things where I have had to self-censor. And I will say that the audiences always enjoy it more when I just let loose. So I think that your listeners are in for a fun episode.
Yeah, Morgan, our producer, was asking about that the other day, and I said, if we bleep out Sarah, we're going to be bleeping every third sentence. So I just think let's just go with it.
Speaking in Morse code,
right. Sarah, you're in Dominican Republic. How did you end up moving from? Were you in New York before that?
Yeah, well, it was sort of a series of big life changes. I used to work as a senior editor at Simon & Schuster, one of the major New York publishers. And I decided that I wanted to leave that job and that career to work for myself. And when I decided that I was ready to become freelance, that meant that I was not tied to New York City anymore, which is sort of the beating heart of the publishing world in the United States. And my husband and I had always talked about maybe moving somewhere tropical, quote unquote, when we retired. And we thought, why should we wait? We don't have to wait. So around the same time I left my job, we were working on finding a place to live here in the Dominican Republic. And then I sold my first book. Surprisingly, that wasn't part of the plan. Wrote it. It came out in January of 2016, and we moved within a month. So we've been here since then, and it's kind of the beginning bookend of the next part of my career trajectory, which has been as a freelance writer in the tropics. Can't beat it.
Deciding to be an author is kind of like being an entrepreneur, right? You're out there on your own, making your own way. We were talking to Jason Pfeiffer, editor of Entrepreneur Magazine, and he was kind of grappling with that himself. Like, how am I writing about entrepreneurs when I'm not an entrepreneur? Oh, wait, I am an entrepreneur. I'm a writer. It's just different. I don't run a business. I run the business of my thoughts, right?
Indeed.
What was your journey like becoming an author?
Well, I was really lucky and well prepared because I had 15 years worth of a career as a book editor with a number of major publishers in New York. And I worked under some fantastic mentors, and I had a really great list by the time I decided to leave. But what I wasn't great at was being told what to do and having to sort of be diplomatic in meetings and work on my office personality versus my regular personality. It was just getting extremely tiresome, and, to the point of it was kind of hard to get out of bed in the morning and go to that job. And it's not because I didn't love what I did. I love working with writers and collaborating with them. But I always was a writer myself and was, had designs on publishing, my own work someday.
However, it is worth noting that I didn't leave my job with the intention of becoming a published writer. I left my job to relax and be a freelance editor and work for myself from, the third coconut tree on the left. And then I got myself into this mess of having a good book idea and writing it and publishing it. And now we're on number 6. Number 6 is coming out.
So
in
you left
April.
the job without a plan, so to speak?
Well, I left the job with a plan to freelance as a book editor. So actually, it was quite well planned out because I'm incapable of doing anything spur of the moment. I am super type A, very meticulous and ambitious person. So what I did was I made the decision to leave. Don't tell my old boss. About a year before I did. And I actually had a chart on my wall, on my kitchen wall, that said, that I colored in a day every day for 365 days leading up to the day that I was going to walk in and give my notice. In terms of making a decision, I did consult all of the mitigating factors, and it was because my 401k wasn't going to vest until I had been at that job for 5 full years. So I figured, what's one more year? Right? What's one more year if it means that I'm going to get to take full advantage of the 4 prior years that I put into this particular company. So I ended up leaving in May of 2015 after spending a year not only financially preparing, but also just sort of emotionally preparing for leaving behind a career that I once thought defined me, and that I thought I was going to become a publisher in my own right and have my own imprint, and I was going to die behind that desk. And, among other things, what that time frame did was give me a chance to get used to it psychologically, but also to build a freelance editorial website and, figure out what I was going to charge and get my contacts all squared away so that the minute I gave notice at my job, I could start mining for new business and new clients.
Did you find that you already had sort of an authentic, I don't give a fuck attitude, and you said, I'm going to write what I know? Or did you find that, hey, that's an effective attitude I see other people have, I need to adopt this and really explore that? So was it sort of one path or the other?
It was actually a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. I think that, as mentioned, I've always been this sort of driven, ambitious person. And I'm an oldest child. I'm the oldest daughter. I was the high school valedictorian. I went to an Ivy League school. This was like sort of ingrained in me to give many, many fucks about success and what other people thought of me and what other people thought of my success and all of this. And that was untenable. That was one of the things that caused me to have to kind of rethink my whole life, my career, where I was going to live, what I was going to do for the next, 40 years. And so
was that imposed on you, or was that something that you imposed on yourself? I mean, you don't become valedictorian on accident.
That was fully
caring about things.
Yeah.
Self-motivated. That was not because my parents were demanding or because anybody expected anything. I have the highest bar for myself. And it was something that I really felt like I needed some enforced tranquility in my life, hence the move from New York City to a small fishing village on the north coast of the Dominican Republic. But basically, I got to the point of leaving behind that career and making these changes out of desperation. And I continued with it out of inspiration. I read Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which at the time, back in the summer of 2015, was a big bestseller. It's all about decluttering your physical space. And I thought, everything I've been doing has really been about decluttering my mental space. I've been turning my back on what I once thought were obligations that were really choices that I could make, turning my back on guilt, turning my back on expectations for myself that were none other than, things that I once thought I wanted and needed to do, when I was 15 or 21 or 30, that just simply, don't have to exist if I change my mind. So when I wrote my book, my first book, which was intended as a parody of hers, called The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck, it was really with that in mind, this idea of paring away the things that don't matter, the things that don't, in her parlance, bring you joy, but I talk about the things that annoy you. You want to clear those out of your mental barn and be able to sort of enjoy things in my life that I hadn't been fully enjoying because I had been too focused on stuff that didn't matter. And I created this concept of the fuck budget, to spend your time, energy, and money only on things that serve you. And so the book kind of started out being like a reaction to all of those fucks I had been giving my whole life. And it segued into, I'm kind of good at this not giving a fuck thing. And now I'm going to teach other people how to do it.
There are a lot of people who are good at that don't end up having successful careers, though.
This is true.
Are they good at not giving a fuck? Or
I know
they...
lots of people who are not good at giving a fuck.
Well, but here's my...
They're complete disasters.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the unsuccessful people who don't give a fuck, it's almost that they want you to think of them as someone who doesn't give a fuck.
Oh, they're inauthentically saying I don't give a fuck. They really do. I don't care what you think about me.
I don't care. Really I just don't give a fuck, man. Yeah. You're like, oh,
but they
okay.
Do. They do.
You really seem to want me to know that about you.
Yeah.
I agree. And, it's a very easy hashtag, no fucks given, 0 fucks given. But actually, my whole philosophy is about giving fewer, better fucks. So, this isn't about, I don't care, I'm burning it all to the ground. I hate my job, I hate my life. I'm escaping all of it. It's what isn't going so well and what doesn't either bring me joy or what doesn't serve me. There are things that you do have to do in life because they serve a purpose, even if you don't totally love doing them. But just getting rid of the stuff that is just abject, not necessary, you hate doing it, you never want to do it again. And being able to focus on the stuff you really do means that you are giving some fucks. You are spending those fuck bucks, that time, energy, and money on things that make you happy. And the happier you are, the better employee you are, the better boss you are, the better spouse you are, the better child you are, the better parent you are. And so I really think that the people who protest too much, maybe they haven't gotten around to the part where they are giving the right fucks. It's not just about
Sanger and I went on a big hike a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember this, Sanger, because I ran across this guy later on after you left, and there was a guy whose trail name. We meet this guy and he's wearing a kilt. So right out of the gate, he gets our attention, and his trail name was no fucks given. You remember that?
No fuck. It was just no fucks.
No fucks? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So this trail name was no fucks.
On the Pacific Crest Trail, everyone goes by a nickname. You don't have a real name.
Yeah, you just get a trail
name.
You
get anointed by others a trail name, and that becomes your name so long as you are on the trail.
If you go back on the trail, do you have the same name?
Yes.
Yeah. So that you're bestowed this name based on, what you're carrying or how you look or how you're acting or what you say. And so this guy's trail name was no fucks.
I remember this.
So I see him a couple weeks later on the trail. His legs are just completely gashed. It looked like he had gotten in a fight with a bobcat. And he's just scratched and bleeding. I'm like, how's that no fucks going for you there?
Yeah.
You're wearing the kilt because that was his thing. I was like, man, you should really get some pants. He goes, no fucks doesn't care. It's like, all right. I hope that's working out for you. Hope that's working out for you. So the reason I bring that up is, how do you determine what you want to give a fuck about? How do you decide what's worthy of your attention, your time and energy versus the things that rightly should be discarded and cast aside?
Well, it's actually pretty darn simple, which is, you sit down and you force yourself to think about it. And, one of the exercises that I take you through in the book has to do with just making a list. It's, things is the first list and work is the second list, and then friends, acquaintances, and strangers, and then family is last, because family is the hardest thing to stop giving a fuck about for obvious reasons. But, and you sit down and you just write out, all of the demands, all the things that are being asked of you, whether you want to do them or don't want to do them, just write them all down. And then look at them, confront them, and say, how does this make me feel? Like, how do I enjoy going to my nephew's soccer games, or do I not? Do I want to go out to happy hour with my coworkers more than once a month, or do I not? Do I want to do karaoke, or do I not? And really just force yourself for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds to contemplate it and think about how it makes you feel. And if it doesn't make you feel good, then it should probably go on your no fucks list. And like I said, there are aspects of our time, energy, or money that we have to spend on things because they serve us. You might not love getting up and going to your job every day, but if you don't go to your job, you're not going to get paid. And if you don't get paid, you can't pay your rent. Or if you don't get paid, you can't buy a new car. If you don't get paid, you can't go out to dinner. And so that is a fuck that you need to work into your budget. But what I always say is, a fuck not given is something gained. If you cross something off of your list, that means you have more time, energy, or money to devote to something that really floats your boat.
Yeah, we have a limited amount of attention and care that we can give, and if we're giving that to things that don't matter, don't serve us, then we're missing out on really good opportunities. It's amazing how you say it's so easy. You just write these things down. I find that in my line of work, helping people make good money decisions, there's a lot of seemingly big problems. Like, how do I determine what really matters to me with my money? Well, you start with writing that down. Start with writing down the things that you want your money to do with you. And that is the easiest, most impactful step you can make. It's that's almost every area of self-discovery and self-awareness is, start out, write it down. You haven't written it down yet. You haven't taken 5 minutes to just be alone with your thoughts on this subject.
I think that what I do has obviously been very helpful for people all over the world, and it's giving them new perspective or a new way of looking at personal development that they didn't have before. Maybe they just like the F word. But I was shocked at how many people just weren't taking the initial step of, interrogate yourself, be honest with yourself about the answers, and write them down. It's like to me, that's just making decisions 101. So, I think that it just helps people see where they're spreading out. For you, it's budgeting with your actual money. For other people, it could be with their time and energy, and where it's going and how it makes them feel to think that they've sent it there. And that usually gives people a sense of, like I said, a sense of inspiration, and it makes it a little bit easier to make decisions. And then the next part is, acting on those decisions.
Yeah. And our time and energy ideally should follow where our money is going. As long as that we've done the exercise on both those categories of resources and aligned them with what we want, right? The things that are worthy of your time and energy are probably worth your money. The things that are worth your money, probably worth your time and energy. I deal with this a lot with people who are saying, should I spend on this? Should I spend on that? And these will be people that have millions of dollars. It's not people who are focused on,
these aren't budgetary questions.
These aren't budget. These aren't, can I afford it? They're asking me, should I spend my money on this? Well, it depends. Depends on if it's important to you.
I don't know your life.
I'm not going to tell you avocado toast is, from the devil. It's just, is eating healthy really important to you? And if it is, then spending some extra money or even a disproportionate amount of your money on eating healthy is not wrong. I want to go back though. You say the most important thing you can do to determine where to give your time and energy, where to give your fucks, is what is serving you and what is making you happy. How do you balance that with things that maybe the outcome makes me happy, but step one that I've got to make today, step two that I've got to make today along the journey to achieve this outcome are not things that serve me, right? So I'll go back to the nephew's football game. Well, maybe I don't want to go to my nephew's football game, but I want to have an impactful presence in my nephew's life, particularly while he's young. Well, going to the football game is probably part of that.
So this brings us to another book I wrote called Fuck No, How to Stop Saying Yes When You Can't, You Shouldn't, or You Just Don't Want to. And in that book, I detail a few different ways to not only after you've made your decision, but to enact your decision. And one of them is called the no and switch. And so the fact is, you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do that doesn't make you happy, but you can offer an alternative that you do want to do and that would make you happy or that is more convenient for you. So if the idea is just that you want to be an impactful presence in your nephew's life, or you want to support your sibling whose child is, playing football on the weekends, but you don't want to go to, 11-year-old children football games, then you can suggest an alternative for a way to spend time with your nephew or a way to indicate how much you support him. You can record a little video of yourself before the game and text it over and be like, hey, rooting for you, buddy. There's lots of ways that you can say no, but then offer something that is actually fine for you and that you're willing to do and that you're happy to spend your time, energy, and or money on. And then the ball is in the other person's court. If your sister says, if you say, hey, like I can't come to the game this weekend, but I'd love to take Tommy to the mall. I don't know what kids do. I don't have kids. Next Wednesday after school.
I don't think they go to the mall anymore.
Whatever they do. Skateboarding. I don't know. I'd love to take him to the mall or whatever. Insert things that people actually do with kids. And then your sister can say, yeah, that would be awesome. Thanks so much. Or, that's not convenient for us because he's got saxophone lessons on Wednesdays. What else you got? And the point is that you've created a boundary and you've enforced it. You do not want to spend your Sunday mornings at a child's football game, but you've offered something else that could be a good fit for both parties. And the idea is always to get to a point where it's a good fit for both parties, right? It's a negotiation. Yeah. And in the end, you want to feel like you've walked away from the negotiating table and gotten what you wanted and not gotten what you didn't want. And so does the other person. So a compromise doesn't have to mean you just saying yes because you feel obligated to, be at your nephew's football game.
Yeah. My grandma is really, really admirably good at this.
That's exactly what I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. She's so good. I tell her all the time, like, how do she has never said yes to anything as in my life
she didn't want
to do. And she's never will make you feel bad about it. And it's that's the fear I think that a lot of people have who struggle with saying no. It's like, well, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want you to be mad at me. I don't want to inconvenience you.
Right.
She will straight up say, hey, you want to go to dinner tonight? Hey, Matt, you want to go to dinner tonight? That is not something that I would enjoy.
Right. Yeah. She'll just straight. I was working with.
That doesn't sound
there was an
fun.
employee I was talking with the other day, and she was trying to get out of something, and she's like, "Well, I could tell him this, and I could tell him that," and she was making up these things.
I could lie to them. I could
lie.
Excuse it.
I could just make up this excuse. And I said, "Why don't you just tell them that's not something you're willing to do?" She goes, oh yeah, I could do that.
I don't want to is a perfectly fine answer, but my whole, and people are surprised by this because some of them can't get past the curse words, but my whole sort of philosophy is honesty and politeness in tandem. You be as honest as you can without hurting someone's feelings. You don't say, your friend invites you to her birthday dinner and you don't say, I don't want to go because I hate your new boyfriend and I don't want to get stuck talking to him for 2 hours. That's too honest. But you could give a no and switch. I can't make it that night. I'd love to take you out for a drink one-on-one. Throw me some dates. And polite is to respond right away. Polite is not leaving your friends hanging or leaving your family hanging and hemming and hawing because you really don't want to do something and you're not sure how to tell them yet. Like, that's not polite. If somebody's planning a party, they need to know their head count. They need to know their budget. You say yes, you say no, whatever the case, do it in a reasonable time frame. So if you can take honesty and politeness, and you can say, there's something to be said for tone of voice. You don't have to say, the last thing I want to do is go to a 11-year-old's football game.
Yeah.
You can say, that's not really for me. Or as you might have guessed, that's not really for me, depending on how well the person knows you who's making the request, and just kind of laugh it off. And like I said, suggest something else. There's also, for people who experience FOMO, fear of missing out, there's what I call the no for now, which is, say you can't afford to do something, but you don't want your friends to stop inviting you to join them at the guest house on Martha's Vineyard for a week over 4th of July, but you can't afford it. You can be honest with them. You can say, I really can't afford that this summer. I either can't afford the time off, I can't afford the Airbnb share, but I'm dying that you guys are going to be there without me. It's going to be so much fun. Please ask me again, and I will make a point to try to make it work. So you're saying no for now, but you're letting people know why. There's no point in lying because then either you're getting caught in a lie or they're going to keep inviting you to things you can't afford, or say you're somebody who has crippling social anxiety, and the answer to not going to a party that's a barbecue full of people you don't know is always going to be the same, because you are always going to have crippling anxiety. If you're just honest with the friend who invited you on the front end, then you never have to have this sort of kabuki theater of asking and giving excuses.
Sometimes it takes a while for friends or family or whomever to kind of understand, oh, that's your boundary. Oh, Sarah's never going to do that.
Yeah, I'm never going to go to pub trivia in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Just not going to do it.
For me, I'm never going to Hooters.
Yeah.
I'm not going to the Hooters or the Twin Peaks. The guys in my gym, they always want to go out on Thursdays. About once a month, somebody gets sick of where we normally go to eat, and they go, oh, let's go to Twin Peaks. I go, y'all have fun.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. I'm never going there.
Yeah. I mean, this is for me with shots. I don't take shots of alcohol anymore. I did plenty of shots in my 20s. And I got to a point where I had a friend who was always pushing them on me. And finally, my first trick with him was I said, okay, I'll do it if you buy me the Patron. And he was like, well, I don't want to spend $12 on a shot. And I was like, well, then I guess I'm not doing it. But, ultimately just got to the point where it's like, I don't do that. And, people can take it or leave it. And this is another thing that I explore in the book, Fuck No, which is this idea of, guilt and obligation. And I don't want to say no because I'm worried that I'm supposed to do this, I should do this, or I'm worried that I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings and they're going to make me feel guilty. It's like all of this is happening in your own head before you've even given somebody a chance to respond to your no. And the fact is, anytime we ask somebody if they want to join us in something or do something and we say no, I know that my, go-to just reaction is like, oh, I wish you could, or, oh, like, is there any way I can change your mind? That's just what humans do. I try to be cognizant of that and try not to pressure people and make them feel guilty. But it's just like, it's what happens. Like, this is how conversation works. And so you have to be prepared to just be like, yeah, I wish I could too, but I can't. And that usually ends it, or say, yeah, I really can't, but how about we do something else?
Yeah.
And I think you just have to be ready to engage in that back and forth and not make it seem like the guilt is blanketing you and that you suddenly have to change your mind. It's just how people work. If somebody wants to really make you feel guilty and really twist the knife, you can just look at them and say, I think that your inability to take no for an answer says more about you than it does about me.
Ooh.
Good day.
I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep that one in my hip pocket.
I think it's a really important for leaders to empower their team to say no. Morgan, our producer, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but she had a problem saying no. And she mentioned it to me like, oh, I need to get better at saying no. I need to get better at saying no. I said, well, now I am 100% on board with this, because that means you're not going to say no to me. That means if I ask you to do a new project, you're not going to say no. And then you're going to be completely overworked, and you're going to be, maybe you're mad at me for being the one to present it to you. Maybe you're exhausted. You're not getting your best work on the other more important projects. I have to have you be able to say no. And so I got her book your book delivered to her house like the next day. This is showing up. Fuck no, read that, required reading. And she's getting better at it. It's still hard. It's still difficult.
It definitely takes practice. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then you're sort of like, why wasn't I doing this 20 years ago?
Because that quality of just sort of always saying yes as an employee is really attractive to an employer. And yet there's a downside to it, obviously, is that the person's going to take on too much. They're not going to know how to prioritize. Perhaps they're going to fail in some of those works, and it's going to be a problem. So I've had to work with employees on learning how to say no as well.
Or they're going to get so burnt out that they leave.
Yeah. They're just going to bail. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there's a story that I tell in Fuck No, which I actually think is really helpful, particularly for younger employees, which is, I was working, this was in my last job before I left. So I was already very senior. I was working for a boss I really liked, but he didn't have, a sort of big social life and family life. And he was really married to the job. And so he was it felt difficult to not go to all the things that one was invited to and say yes to all of the extra projects and things like that, because he was setting such a model for working 22 hours a day and constantly being responsive to emails and all of this stuff. But he asked me, and it was a real honor. He asked me if I would be the editor among the dozen or so editors at our imprint to accompany him to the London Book Fair, which happens once a year. And it's quite a privilege to be asked to go because publishers aren't bringing their whole staff. I happened to have two authors at the time who were really big in England. And so it'd be an opportunity to wine and dine them and, meet with their agents. And also just kind of, it was a prestigious offer, and I really appreciated that he made it. But what he didn't know is I'm a terrible flyer. I'm a real bad traveler. It takes me a long time to get over having had to go somewhere. It makes my already extant anxiety 10 times worse. And I definitely don't want to travel like that for work. I don't want to cross the Atlantic to have meetings all day, every day for a week. And it was like kind of that moment of desperation when I left my job. It was this moment of desperation of like imagining what a nightmare it was going to be for me to not only get through the flying and the travel and all of that and the jet lag and whatever, but then have to sort of be on in front of my boss and in front of all of these international colleagues. And I was just like, there's no way I can say yes to this. I cannot say yes. And so I waited a day or two, and he said, hey, if you don't want to go for some reason, somebody else will want to. So I'd love for you to let me know. And I just looked at him and I said, I really don't. I really appreciate it. I'm honored that you would ask me. I really don't want to go. And here's why. And I just told him a version of exactly what I told you. And he looked at me and he said, God, he's like, sometimes I wish I could say no to these things, but I'm the big boss. Like, I have to go. He's like, absolutely. If you don't want to do this, nobody is forcing you. This is not part of what you get paid for. And I was like, okay, thanks. And I just walked away like, wow, that was so much easier than I had built it up in my head to be. And I think that that's what people who have a hard time saying no, particularly in authority, no to authority, no in a work situation, they don't understand that the delivery is a lot of it, the understanding who you're talking to and what they'll respect about how and why you give your answer. And a lot of times you can say, I don't think I can take on this project because I think it will take away from my ability to do something else that your supervisor thinks is
that's
very
critical,
important.
right?
And really just saying it up front, the same way that you tell your friends, I can't afford that Martha's Vineyard share this summer, but I really want you to keep asking me. You can say to your boss, I really appreciate you trusting me with this. I'm afraid I won't be able to do a good job on both. Which would you prefer? Speaking of a no and switch, would you like me to hand off my duties on this one thing and take on this big new project, or would you like me to stay on this and I'll cede this opportunity to someone else and please come back to me in the future? There's just a lot you can do with your reason for saying no and how you present it and what you tell people to expect from you, that they can expect from you, and what they can't.
How do you balance true prioritization versus dealing with anxiety? And in your example, it may have been, I'm not saying it was, but what if that was just an anxiety about travel and it really wasn't something that was a prioritization of these other things? How do you balance out those things to know if it's truly what you should be caring about versus not?
So that's kind of dipping the toe into the mental health waters, which I'm a big proponent of, just kind of shouting about, all of the things that are going on in all of our heads and how we deal with them. For me, it's absolutely travel anxiety, and something that, I know takes a lot of mental energy and sort of psychological capacity to recover from. And I wasn't going to be able to be my best self on an international work trip. So I had to say, like, all I'm going to do is be miserable and kind of not great at what my boss wants and needs from me on this trip. So it is better to expose my fear of flying and difficulty in traveling and to say, I don't think I'm up to this, than it would be to pretend like I was up to it and then fail spectacularly. So, there's other things that, like, had it been life-changing or career-making, I probably would have done it. But it wasn't. And I knew it wasn't. It was just the London Book Fair. It's publishing. I always would say, like, nobody's going to die on the table if Sarah Knight doesn't go to the London Book Fair. This is not like you can show up as needed and not show up and it's going to be okay. And so I would say that, I didn't have to in that moment prioritize, for example, keeping my job versus dealing with my travel anxiety. Like I knew I wasn't going to lose my job. I just thought I might disappoint my boss and that might be some sort of invisible demerit to me for the future. But then, then I told him and it wasn't, and everything was totally fine. And, the other thing I would say is I talk about prioritizing a lot in my books, prioritizing what you spend your time, energy, and money on, prioritizing your tasks so that you can accomplish your goals, as stated and on time. And I prioritize by urgency. I find that's the easiest, quickest way to cut through the noise. What needs to be done today. And if you turn your big to-do list into a much shorter must-do list, then you can focus on the far fewer things that actually must get done. And what that does is gives you the time and space to focus better on fewer things. But it also takes all that noise out of your head of what I should do and what about who asked me, are they more important? And what about, well, that would be easier and maybe I should just do it. No, do what has to be done today.
How do you keep from just being in a constant state of fighting fires if you're doing that?
That's exactly how you do it is you take that big, unwieldy, overwhelming to-do list and whittle it down into only the things that must be done today and put the rest off for tomorrow. And that is responsible procrastination, and everybody loves to procrastinate. So it's a very popular tip from my second book, Get Your Shit Together.
Yeah, if you're telling me it's okay to wait till tomorrow, I'm listening. When you have a, that makes sense to me, right? You got a bunch of stuff. You got 15 things you got to get done. 5 of them have to happen today, so you might as well start there. What would still be tempting for me is to keep postponing that 10 that don't have to get done until they have to get done.
But some of them will have to get done tomorrow. They'll be on your must-do list for tomorrow. What about
the things that never have to get done?
Then maybe they shouldn't be on your list.
Well, okay, so you didn't have to write a book.
True. I did not. I absolutely did not. That wasn't on my to-do list. Just sort of happened.
Yeah, so I have to I have to, for me to write a book, I got to have someone making me do that.
Well, that's no fun.
A deadline.
I got to have a deadline. Yeah, I got to have something. I got to have some sort of consequence.
Well, but you're saying that it's a want to do thing, not a have to do.
Something I want to do. Yeah.
Right. Well, then you put it on your list. And, this is another thing that the way to accomplish your goals is not by trying to sit down and write a book in a day. It's a series of small, manageable chunks. Just like moving to the Dominican Republic, it was like, well, we had to sell our apartment in New York and we had to find where we were going to live down here. And we had to learn how to speak Spanish and we had to get residency and we had to buy a car.
You learn how to speak Spanish?
I can speak Spanish passably enough to live here now. Yes.
Did you get to that point before you moved?
Nope. I did it all by just immersion. My husband chose a different path. He found YouTube videos and did a Spanish lesson once a week and listened to Spanish podcasts and, really made a study of conjugating and stuff. And I just kind of learned by living here. But it wasn't like, this big sort of unwieldy, overwhelming goal of like leaving the country and setting up shop somewhere. It was like we did little things, we did a little bit at a time in service to the big goal. So with writing, a lot of people are very different. It really depends on who you are, what kind of book you're trying to write, how much experience you have. For me, it's butt in the seat, 500 words a day. If I can do more, great. If I can't, that probably means I need a day off. But just, do it. And if I want to write a 50,000 word book and I divide it by the number of days and I give myself, 1 or 2 days a week off and I look at the calendar and I'm like, I can do this in X number of months. And that's how I do it. That doesn't work for everybody because creativity can't always be pounded out in 500 word chunks, but I am writing personal development books. So if I can't do it, then people probably shouldn't listen to me.
Yeah. It's, for me, I do it. I can ball up all my creativity on 1 day a week.
Yeah, and that's totally
get
fair.
It done. Get 8 hours of creativity, and then I'm like, oh, geez, I need a break from that. back to the analytical brain.
Yeah.
for the
I
rest of
mean,
the
and
week.
like for me, I'm trying to do my taxes right now, and that makes me want to walk into the sea. So I think that, creative brain and analytical brain don't always coexist in the same people in the same way.
So
but
you make
it is
the
on my
want
must-do
to-
list. I have to do it.
you-
So
You make the want to list a habit instead of a task.
exactly. I think that habits are a perfect way to put it, because once you do something enough, repetition is key, then it just becomes a thing you do. And, for me, when I've been writing these books, I'm on my 6th one is coming out in April of this year. I've done 3 accompanying journals. I've done like a special holiday book last year. Like I've had a lot of writing projects on my desk in front of me for the last 7 years. And the habit is sitting down in front of my laptop and doing the thing. I don't consider it even really part of my to-do list. It's just like, this is what I do. I get up, I drink coffee, I feed the cats, I do my social media, and then I open up my laptop and go for it. It's just a habit.
So that's interesting. So because there are a lot of things that are important to do that aren't urgent, right? And,
Mhm.
and if I don't do them, I'm not going to have the results I want. So let's say building a business plan or doing performance review for staff or whatever. Those things aren't urgent, but I've got to do those. So I think what I hear you saying is put them on the list and build them into the structure and the habits so that so you don't have to make a decision on those. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the idea for me, the reason that I prioritize by urgency is that it's too easy to prioritize by what I feel like doing. And a lot of times what you feel like doing on your list is not really the thing that needs to be done today. And it's taking away from the time you have to get the actual urgent stuff done. So then you're late on the stuff that really had a deadline because you decided to do what you felt like, or you decided to do the easy thing. And that's something that I would get so caught up in my younger working days that I would stay at my stupid publishing job until 9 o'clock at night, which is ridiculous. You're not getting paid for that. Because I would be doing like 20 easy things and then get started on the big thing that was going to take me 3 hours. And that was just because I felt like, well, if it's easy, I can knock it off my list and then I'll have it done. But like to me, that's unsustainable.
I start knocking things off my list that weren't even on the list.
Like then you put them on after so you can cross them off.
Yeah. I'm like,
There's nothing wrong with that.
I'll sit there at 9 o'clock and go, look at all this stuff I did. This morning, I didn't know that I was going to edit some old PowerPoint from, whatever the hell.
Clean out the closet or something.
Yeah, whatever the hell I was doing. I'm so productive. Well, you did a bunch of crap that you didn't even need to do.
Yeah, and I also really believe in putting things on your must-do list that involve, your mental health and self-care. Like, for example, I need to get my roots done. The gray's coming in. And I don't have to do that. It's not urgent. It doesn't have to be done today. But if I'm going to make these TikTok videos for my publisher next week and I want to feel good about that, then I got to get my hair done sometime before I do the TikTok videos. And so it does there's an urgency to it, but really it's just, I want to go to the salon and I want to feel, I want to feel salon fresh. And it's okay to make that a thing that has to get done. A lot of people don't schedule in their me time and their downtime. And I just think that's a huge mistake. I think there's so many people out there who will never do it if they don't put it in the schedule.
Put it on my schedule.
Maybe that feels antithetical to the idea of downtime or the idea of a hobby, but show me the person who gets all of their downtime in and makes room for all their hobbies without putting it in their calendar, and I'll show you a unicorn.
I saw a leader once get mad at an employee for putting personal things on his work calendar.
Really?
It's like,
the trick
it's all one calendar.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we have one day. And this guy, it's not like he put, get my haircut at 10 a.m. Like it wasn't a personal thing during the workday. He wasn't mad that he was doing something personal during the workday.
Okay.
He was mad that his, 7:30 dinner with friends was on the work calendar.
Well, that's ridiculous.
So that is ridiculous, but you can get around that. For example, if you need to keep your supervisor happy and you can't, and there's no way to tell them that they're being ridiculous without losing your job, you develop code words. so you can code your calendar, or you just put those. I used to do in the last couple of years of my job, I would just mark sections of my day busy, just so that people couldn't invite me to meetings. Like, because they'll stop trying. Meetings are useless. They're a huge waste of everybody's time, I believe. Could all happen in an email. And, there were just ones that I was like, I'm not going to that. And if I make it really hard for you to schedule around me, you'll just schedule around me and I'll just get the notes from somebody else.
I do that too. I put things on my calendar and block them out, and I'll have people try and violate it because they know it's what, they know it's what you just said. They know it was like one of these, like,
well, then you need new
blockouts.
tricks.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, I didn't think you had anything, but I'm like, no, we can't do that.
Can't do it.
Mark
You
it as
have
busy.
to say no.
Yeah, you have to say no. The first time you just violate it, then it's never any good.
Yeah,
so I have a question for you. So it is easy for me to really embrace this attitude, sort of not giving a fuck, right? Because of where I am in life, where I am in my career, where I am financially. It's pretty easy, and I get accused.
Where are you? What does that mean?
Well, I'm not at the beginning of my career. Okay, I don't have to climb the corporate ladder. I don't have a boss I'm trying to please. Financially, I'm fine, and so it's really easy for me. And I get accused by my wife of sort of embracing that I don't give a fuck too much.
People do say it about you.
People do, yeah. And sometimes they'll say it to me, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, Sarah, how do you respond to people that say, okay, well, maybe it's easy for you to take that attitude, but I'm not in that position. I have a family to please or a boss to please. I'm still trying to work up the corporate ladder. I can't really embrace this the way that you're suggesting that I do. Do people say that to you?
They do. I get a lot of responses through my DMs and after my podcast with people saying, well, it's easy for you to say, I can't do it. And what I say to them is, I wish I had started doing it 20 years ago. The fact is that developing this way of managing your own boundaries and knowing what you want and budgeting the time, energy, and money you have to spend going after what you want is what is going to get you faster to a point where you don't have to care so much. These are all really positive ways of being and of taking on responsibility and of not overcommitting and of setting people's expectations so they know what they can expect from you, setting expectations for yourself that are all going to make you a better employee, a more present friend, more present partner. It might seem counterintuitive to people, but really, if they do focus on all of the practical ways that I explain how to do all of this stuff in my books, they're going to find that their lives are better for it. I
100% agree with that. I spent a good part of my early career doing things that I wish I had not done. Taking on clients I shouldn't have taken on, working weekends or evenings when I shouldn't have been doing that. And I think I would have been better had I adopted the attitude that I have now, is that here is how I'm prioritizing.
I learned from his mistake, because he would tell me, oh man, I wish I didn't do it this way. I wish I didn't do that. And I remember when, for a long time, twice a week, he would drive, an hour and a half to these different offices, and he'd spend all damn day at this office that is an hour and a half away from home. So he's not getting home till 10 o'clock at night. He's working 14-hour days on a complete other side of town, away from his family. And he's like, I wish I didn't do that. I go,
oh yeah, I wish I hadn't.
I'm glad you told me that now. And I stopped doing it. And yeah, it is hard to say no, especially when there's like a direct benefit to saying yes. It's like somebody will pay me to go say yes. I'll get money for doing this. It's really hard to say no.
But you picked a boundary. You drew a boundary.
I picked that boundary because you recommended it, and it paid off so well. And what's amazing is everybody else for the most part, started to fit within my boundary that I had set.
Yes,
people that
you
otherwise
can train people. This is the best
Yes.
part. They will fall in line after a time, and that's what I was saying earlier about you have to practice, and you do it once, and it's kind of easier than you thought, and then you do it again, and then people start to expect from you or not expect things that you won't give them. But also, the more energy and time that you're conserving by, say, not doing a 3-hour round trip commute 2 days a week, you can put toward figuring out alternate solutions for that. There's something to be said for not just blindly saying yes to things, but actually taking the time to think, how could I get this thing done for whomever is asking it of me in a different way? And there's this feeling that you have to say yes to in your job to your sort of superior, but I would bet you that 9 times out of 10, the person above you is going to respect you more for coming up with a better solution that suits everybody, that doesn't involve 3 meaningless commuting hours twice a week, or anything else of the sort. And with, now that we're in the zone that we are now in terms of technology, there's so many ways to get things done where you don't have to be physically present. And the other thing I would say is good things come to those who delegate. And it is very difficult for somebody like me who is a control freak and who has long taken the attitude that if you want something done right, just give it to me and I'll do it. It has been difficult to delegate things and to say it is more worth it for me not to have to do this thing than it is for me to worry about how well it's going to get done by somebody else. And eventually you surround yourself with people that you trust, whether those are your friends, you're in your private life or in your professional life. And again, you practice. I kind of feel like a drug dealer. I'm like, just try it. Just try it once. You're going to love it. But if you can learn to delegate those tasks to people who are willing to do them, then your life will be better for it.
I think a lot of people really want a risk-free approach to life. I get that in money decisions all the time. People want a risk. Well, is this is risk-free? No, nothing's risk-free, man.
No,
There's nothing you can do with your money, with your time, with your life at all ever that has no risk. Everything has a risk. The risk of not doing what you are preaching is you're going to say yes to crap that you shouldn't be doing. You're going to care about things that you shouldn't really care about, that you don't care about, but you're going to put time and energy into them. That's the risk, and you're already living the consequence.
Yeah, and
it's the risk of doing something different.
And if you want to talk, outside of a professional realm with family, do you really want to be in these sort of mutually resentful relationships with people you theoretically love because you're constantly doing things with and for one another that you don't want to do? When you could have the time that you do spend together, that both of you want to spend together, be great fun. There's no reason that we have to put ourselves into these situations where we're just constantly mad at people for demanding too much of us. Just set your boundary, enforce it, and then the time that you do both want to spend together, whether it's at your 11-year-old nephew's football game or on a family vacation or something, can be good instead of full of seething resentment. There's just doing it yourself.
Once you set those boundaries, the people that had been violating the most are those that are going to not appreciate you setting a boundary, but they will eventually respect that boundary once it's clear.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I've been with my husband for 23 years, and my in-laws now know exactly who they're dealing with. And over time, we've developed a perfectly copacetic way of doing things and not doing them, saying yes, saying no, doing things partially, leaving early, that kind of thing. And it's fine. Like once they learned who I was, they stopped kind of pushing against it. And we just were able to have a nice time when we're together. And when we're apart, I'm having a nice time.
So what's this next book?
The next book is called Grow the Fuck Up: How to Be an Adult and
kids.
and get treated like one. I actually did want to write a book for young people because I hear so much from people, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 20-year-olds who say, I got your book, Calm the Fuck Down, and it changed my outlook on my anxiety, or I read your book, You Do You, and it gave me so much confidence. And I thought, my publishers think that young people aren't reading the books because of the swears or that they're not allowed to buy them or something. But I think of what I was reading when I was 13, and it was definitely not being censored. So I started out wanting to write it for young people, and then just kind of realized as I was crafting the book that we all need some help in being adults. And that it doesn't really matter, all of the advice I give across all of what I call the no fucks given guides is meant to be widely applicable. Whatever socioeconomic situation you're in, whatever age you are, wherever you live in the world, if I'm doing my job properly, then I'm giving advice that anybody should be able to take. So I ended up making it a much more kind of general interest book. And the thing that seems to be attractive to people with whom I've been talking about it in these months leading up to publication is that second part of the subtitle, and getting treated like one. Because nobody's that excited about, I have to be more mature and responsible and accountable, but what's it going to get you? And so that is a huge part of Grow the Fuck Up. It's explaining, when you're a pleasure to deal with, it is much easier to bend people to your will. There are reasons to take on added layers of responsibility and to be the mature voice of reason in a conversation, and to learn how to say, I'm sorry, even if you're not, just say it. It's going to, open a lot more doors for you than it closes. So I'm really excited about that. It's coming out in April, just in time for graduation season.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to reading it. It's amazing how when you start to take responsibility in life, you get treated with respect.
Yeah.
When you have no responsibility, you don't get treated with respect, and that's no fun. You don't get treated like an adult. I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you and your work and your other books?
They can find me at sarahknight.com. Sarah with an H, KNIGHT.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here, Sarah.
Sarah, thanks so much. Go and enjoy the beach today.
I'll be having a cocktail. It's 6:00 here. So.
Yeah. My takeaway from our discussion with Sarah was about deciding to determine what your boundaries are ahead of time. In other words, sit down right now, figure out what are your boundaries, and then make those decisions to hold the line on those boundaries, because people will violate what they don't know exists. They may try and push on it once they know it exists, but once they realize it's firm, they're going to respect it.
My takeaway is building habits for the want tos on your list so they can come off the to-do list. The to-do list is a list of tasks and chores. And if you want to get something down, build it into your routine, like writing a book or going to the gym. Shouldn't be a have to. You just made a great decision to listen to this episode of Decidedly. Make another great decision and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate your support. It helps others find our community and defeat bad decision-making in their own lives. For more daily decision-making insights, check us out at decidedlypodcast.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Decidedly Podcast. Thanks again for listening. I'm Sanger Smith, and this is Decidedly.
Insights, advice, and comments provided by Sean Smith, Sanger Smith, and speakers identified as part of the Decidedly podcast should not be considered recommendations. Speakers not identified as members of Decidedly are expressing their opinion, and their statements should not be construed as reflecting the views of the Decidedly team. This podcast is produced solely for informational purposes, not personalized advice.